The war that spanned across the universe was no longer considered a war, but a genocide, as each of the particular factions both decided that any species that would not bow down and be part of their faction did not deserve life. Forget sentience, but did not deserve life at all. And they began to go at each of these areas simultaneously with every ship at their disposal, from the smallest little patrol ship to the largest dreadnought they could make. And they began to fight their way across the entirety of the stars, giving absolutely no quarter to any ship they came across. Any ship they even perceived to be an enemy was fired upon with reckless abandon. And what happened? What happens with all wars? You get refugees, and you get a lot of them. Many of the species that believed they were either not powerful enough technologically or powerful enough physically to fight either faction ran. However, they could not run to the other side, and they could not stay neutral. Each side did not care about neutral sectors at all. Each of these homeworlds was simply burned, either slagged or taken over and its resources stripped. And many of the species, as they ran, realized there was very little choice in which way to turn. And these species, within weeks of each other, all turned to one place that they believed they had the one chance of surviving the best. They went into human-controlled space. It didn't matter at all that they found all those audio messages telling them to get out, stay out, fuck off, or whatever the hell message it was. They simply went in and started broadcasting broadband to say, "Help us, please," and got no response at all. They headed towards the closest colonies, but it would take a while, given their technology level, to jump into these colonies. In some cases, it would take weeks to get there. But each faction did not want refugees. As far as they were concerned, this was a holy war now. There was only one choice for victory, and it was the death of any of those not just who opposed, but who stood in any potential opposition, and neutrality was considered opposition. So they decided, fuck it, and chased the refugees into human space. And at first, there was no response. Just the simple audio message. Go away. Turn around. Just simple basic English was all they heard. It wasn't long until they started catching up to the refugees. And the refugees, in sheer desperation, began to turn their engines not to 100%, but pushing almost 500% in an attempt to try and jump away or get in sublight speed fast enough that they could stay out of weapons range, getting faster and faster and faster until they got up in the high 90% of FTL. This did not go unnoticed, it seemed, as more messages came out, but these were not the automated message everyone was going for. It was a message sent out from each of the colonies. Each one was different, but they all basically said the same thing. You're invading our territory. Turn back or we'll fire on you. In response, the refugees again cried for help, pleading for the humans to help them out before they were taken. In many cases, 1 or 2 ships was all that was left of their species. They begged for human help. They screamed to the stars for help, any assistance at all, as they began to close in towards the outer human colonies. And as they saw, the human colonies were indeed covered in satellites. Dozens of satellites. Not only were the planets covered, but their own satellites, their moons, had their own satellites around them. Everyone knew that humans had this love affair with turrets, and any satellite basically was a floating turret. Even as their sensors screamed that they had been targeted, the refugees again screamed in. All different languages screamed across the stars, "Help us, please." And eventually, they did get a response. It was meager at first. A simple shot fired across from an energy weapon in between the refugees and those pursuing them. Maybe it was a ship whipping past in between them, turning its weapons towards the approaching fleet as a warning. Those aliens realized this was a human thing. They always tried to warn you, always tried to scare you away, but they had numbers on their side. They had all the species on both sides. They didn't even know if the other fleet was on the other side of human space, but they believed even their forces were enough to take care of the humans. And finally, a message came across. You have violated sovereign human space. You have 10 seconds to turn around or you will be fired upon. Looking at their sensors, it didn't matter what faction they looked, they didn't see anything. They knew the humans had stealth tech, but given the number of their ships, there was no way the humans would be able to take them all on. They would be found as they figured out what the humans would do, hide in the shadows, in the nebulas, in any type of magnetic sphere that messed up their sensors. And eventually, if that failed, they could simply look out and they would see the humans firing and be able to fire back at them. They believed they could take on the humans. From inside the battleship, it was Admiral Pop who finally gave the order, "Fuck it, let's go." And their battle group head out. It wasn't long before every single human battleship, every single battle group, the entire armada was moving in all different directions. It didn't matter if it was from the colonies. It didn't matter if it was from Earth. It didn't matter if it was from one of their own moons. It did not matter, but human ships began to move. But the aliens didn't stop, as they did not see many ships, and those they did see were small patrol craft. What could they possibly do against so many? And then the humans came into existence. At least that's what it seemed to be. As sensors began to start blaring warning signals, and they started to register these massive ships out in the void of space. The humans had mastered stealth technology well beyond what they had believed even possible. The ship seemed to appear out of nowhere, and right in between the fleeing refugees and the approaching ships. The aliens did not give another word as they charged their weapons, and with that, the humans had their answer. These fleets would not withdraw. These fleets would not surrender. And the 3 words were the last words put out by the human admiral. Fire for effect. Around all human space, it didn't matter if it was a ship, a satellite, a planetary-based weapon system. If it could reach the enemy fleet, it fired in that moment. For a few moments in between that, the enemy fleets did not know what they were actually facing. As projectiles made their way across at somewhere close to the speed of light, they only had a moment to register this. The sensors, most of them, believed these were simple asteroids that they didn't pick up before. But wait, weren't they moving a little fast? And then every single energy weapon fired right behind them, and humans set space on fire. And they did not stop. They did not halt. Even as both armadas fired into the human vessels, it did not even slow them down. The rate of fire did not even vary for one solitary second as they began to continually fire volley after volley. And they didn't even stop with that. Even though larger cannons took longer to recharge or reload, the smaller cannons began to fire as well. The battleships, the dreadnoughts, the destroyers, the frigates, the corvettes, hell, even the patrol ships began to charge the enemy fleets. Anyone who was a spacefaring vessel got into the fray, and gave them a good old-fashioned human fuck you. Within 10 hours, both alien fleets were simply metal floating in space. The humans, true to their nature, sent out craft to try and get any survivors, but there weren't many. The refugees were then rescued and relocated to different space stations, ones that could be adjusted for their own individual biologies, and told that given the chance, humans would return them to their homeworlds. However, now humans have a mission. They have a true mission. Even though they had destroyed both armadas, the war would not end here. And with that, it was chosen that the humans would reach out beyond their sector for the first time in over 100 human years. And they would bring with them not only human compassion for those that have been ravaged by the war, but human rage to those who would kill the innocent over what? A self-inflated ego? Now it is truly time to show the universe why humans love these turrets so much. The fleet headed out within 12 hours. The war itself was over in 2 days.